So I'm Christy, and I'll be helping to moderate the panel today. I just finished my freshman year at Stanford. And today, Ryan will be sharing his story with us. He grew up in a small town in Iowa, and it's because of his own personal experiences, he believes computer science is a fundamental topic that everyone should understand. As a result, Ryan has combined his two passions of law and technology. Let's learn why he believes that. So, Ryan, can you start by telling us where you grew up and a little bit about your elementary, middle, and high school education?
Yeah, thanks, Christy. So, like you said, I grew up in a small town of about 100,000 people in Northeast Iowa. And, I had a little bit of exposure to math and science, as you would expect from, a decent public school. But there was no exposure to computer science, hardly even to programming at all. And I mean, honestly, I graduated in 2012. And so it's kind of surprising that we didn't really have great opportunities like that. And so I explored a number of different things as I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I spent 2 years at the United States Military Academy at West Point. I learned a lot about leadership, leading teams. I explored a bunch of different majors while I was there: engineering, computer science, things like that. I ended up settling on political science, actually, because of some of the limited programs that they had there that really attracted me. And then ultimately, I decided I didn't want to go into the Army. I wanted to go into the civilian world and into the workforce. And I ended up settling on computer science because it was something that I'd always wanted to do, and I had never really found the confidence to do it. I always felt that somebody else was going to be better than me at it, and I was already behind the curve. And finally, I just sat down and I decided that I had nothing to lose, and I might as well just give it a try. I started doing computer science as an undergrad at the University of Northern Iowa, and I absolutely loved it. I caught on. I felt like I caught on to the material quicker than I had anticipated. I really enjoyed what I was doing, and I actually found like I thought I had a really good fit. And coming out of a computer science program, I was trying to figure out what I could do with that degree. And there was all the traditional options, and then there were some non-traditional ones. And I'd always been told growing up as a kid that there was a lot of competition for average. And what my parents meant by that when they said that to me was go somewhere where you have a unique skill set that not everyone shares. And so I chose law because that's a place where there are very, very few computer scientists. And so it really makes me stand out here. I've quickly become like a go-to advisor on, when somebody has a client with a really technical problem or a really interesting technology, I'm the guy that they go to first because I'm most likely to understand it. And so that really helps me differentiate myself and stand out here at the law firm in a way that, another degree probably wouldn't.
So you briefly mentioned a little bit, but how did you go from that background to Harvard Law School?
Yeah, so it turns out that they really want to see more STEM backgrounds in the law. And part of that is, there are certain areas of legal practice that you need a STEM degree, specifically if you're filing for intellectual property protections. You have to have some kind of STEM background in order to even be licensed to practice in that area. But just more in general, more and more clients are using software in their everyday businesses. It seems kind of obvious, but that's the perspective from the outside. From the inside, when you're just chugging away day to day, you don't necessarily see the changes happening until it's a really grand change. And that's kind of what's happened to law, where it wasn't really a priority until all of a sudden, now it's a huge priority that we get more and more STEM backgrounds into law. And one of the ways that they do that is by law school admissions. And so I found myself in a position where, I was competitive for a lower tier, like a mid-tier computer science master's program, or I was competitive for a top tier law program. And so ultimately I decided to go for that top tier and see where it would land.
What were some of your favorite subjects throughout school?
I was a weird mix. I think back in high school, my favorites would have been math and English, which is a weird combination. Normally you might expect math and science or English and history. But I liked exercising both sides of myself in a sense. And one thing that I've found, having a bit of a liberal arts background is hugely valuable, even in computer science, where it's a heavily technical field, because ultimately, you function in teams, right? And so anytime you have a great idea, you have to convey that idea to other people. And you're going to have to do that in whether it's verbal, whether it's written, but you have to be able to communicate. You have to be able to put your ideas down on paper. And so having both sides there, I found that to be super interesting, and now I found it to be super helpful.
A couple speed questions for you. They're pretty informal. You can just answer them like 1 word, 2 seconds. So our first one is, what is your favorite book?
My favorite book is Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. It's about a kid that struggles to figure out what he wants to do with his life. And so he goes into different career paths and tries to find the right fit for him. And it's the story of how he finds that right fit.
Favorite movie?
Ferris Bueller's Day Off. It's about a high school kid that decides to take a day off of school. He calls in sick. And I think it's a good reminder that, you shouldn't play hooky, but every once in a while, we all need a vacation.
Favorite sport?
I was a football player in high school.
Favorite hobby?
I'm a pilot in my free time. So I like to go flying around the area.
Dream vacation spot?
New Zealand. I think it would be a really cool place to go.
Donuts or cupcakes?
Donuts.
Last game played?
Ooh, that's a good question. Ultimate Frisbee.
Favorite food?
Pizza. I'm pretty basic like that.
Yeah, so I wanted to make sure that all the students who have joined in today have some time to ask questions. If you guys want, you can use the chat and you can send a chat to everyone, or you can unmute your audio and ask the question that way. Favorite singer? There we go.
Favorite singer? Oh boy. That's a good question. I got really into the band Creedence Clearwater Revival lately. I know that's really old and that dates me quite a bit, but that's been my favorite band recently. Ooh, actor. Clint Eastwood. Song, Fortunate Son by CCR. Ooh, I've got a question here. What's my favorite Harry Potter character? I always really liked Dumbledore. He was always my favorite, and I was really sad to see him go. Favorite engineer? I think I'm split between Howard Hughes and Elon Musk. I think both of those guys had a really powerful personality, and they recognized that there are some things that you just can't solve with technology. Right? You can't change the laws of physics. But outside of that, just about anything is accomplishable with technology. And so being able to look at the world and see the possibilities, I think is the most important thing an engineer can have. Because ultimately, as an engineer, you're really a creator. You're creating something. And so being creative is essential. Let's see, Fortnite or Minecraft? Minecraft, definitely. In virtual reality is one of the coolest things I've done. My free time, so I go flying, I go hiking, and I spend a lot of time. I have friends that have scattered all over the country, and so I try to spend a lot of time traveling and spending time with them. I find that the relationships that you have over 5 or 10 years can make a huge difference in your life. The weirdest software I have used. That's a good question. I think the weirdest things, it's a group of software, actually. I've worked in a couple places where, because of security, we have to use applications that run exclusively on Internet Explorer. And that's always been a head scratcher to me, because it's a known security risk to use outdated software on old browsers. And yet, in the name of security, we use these things. And I think that's just it's like a battle between old software and new software. And it will continue to play out throughout the next decades, even. Favorite president? I was always a big fan of Eisenhower. I think he did a really good job of uniting instead of dividing. And I mean, he gave us the interstate system, which I think is one of the best public works projects that we've done lately. Books or movies? Definitely books. I think there's just something about interacting with a book that, if you don't do it enough, that's how you build intellectual capacity. You just read. I've never met someone who's successful and that other people would describe as smart and successful, and they don't say that they don't read books. Everybody that is successful reads a ton of books, almost to a person. What can I not survive without? Close friends and family. That's any material possession I can survive without, but without people around me, I'm in trouble. Favorite historical person? Yeah, I think Howard Hughes. He had a kind of a weird life. He made some really interesting aircraft designs. He was a fantastic aerospace engineer at first. And then he had some health issues that caused him to lose a little bit of grip with reality. And so then he started making some really crazy designs, and then things kind of spiraled out of control. But he made the space age happen, in a sense. Cabbage or broccoli? Broccoli, maybe by a slim margin. And my favorite subject? It's varied. So sometimes it's been math, sometimes it's been science, sometimes it's been history. I think the thing for me is it has to be something that's interesting and engaging, and that I feel that I'm getting something out of the experience. And so oftentimes that's teacher dependent. So finding the right teachers can be the most important thing, what you're actually learning from them. The details aren't always as important as the relationship with the teacher and the soft skills that you learn.
So I think we're out of time for questions.
Okay.
Yeah, if you guys have lingering questions, we can ask them at the end. But some people might have to go. So just to wrap it up here, if you had one or two key takeaways for the students, what would they be?
They would be, so first of all, stick with computer science. That's regardless of what you think you want to do, whether you want to become a programmer or whether you want to become, I don't know, an artist or an actor or a lawyer. Stick with it, because it's a valuable skill set and it's really difficult to go wrong. And then the second takeaway would be the hardest lesson that I had to learn was when you start out in school, you think the best thing you can do is know the answer to every question, right? The smartest kid in class is the one that always raises their hand and always has the correct answer. Very quickly, when you get out into the real world, you realize that the smartest person is always the one asking the most questions. So the second takeaway I would have is gain the confidence to ask questions and figure out what other people know. If you can have that confidence to ask questions, you will be tremendously successful.
Cool. Thank you so much for talking with us today, Ryan.